Hello, Professor, fellow classmates. This is Joshua Murphy. I was the CEO of the Molson 5 company. I worked with my management team, Martinez, who was the Chief Financial Officer, Alexander, who was our Chief Marketing Officer, Syed Shah, who was our Chief of Operations, and Denley was our Chief Commercial Officer. As CEO of the Molson 5, I helped by gathering information and recommendations from the management team in order to keep a big picture of the strategy and the strategic direction the company was going as a whole. So I would make decisions as to how best to execute company strategy. For example, I would help schedule production runs of new cereal varieties along with our Chief of Operations. I would help to change product pricing with my Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Commercial Officer. And I would make investment decisions for production capacity or debt repayment along with my Chief Financial Officer. And then I would communicate these decisions back to the management team. In order to keep this wide strategic view of our company's operations, I used a dashboard of 6 SAP transaction screens. The first screen up here, top left, was the purchase order tracking screen, which I would use to keep a view on when our raw materials were coming in so that I could schedule production. Now you can see I didn't have access to the database we used during the actual competition. We have the clear, pure water instead, but you'll get an idea of what I was doing anyways. The second screen was the collective conversion of planned orders, which I used to release orders once the raw materials came in. I would then track production through the production schedule report and keep an eye on the end of production so that I could get our Chief Operations Officer set up to make another MRP run. I also kept an eye on our financial statements, particularly our bank cash account, in order to keep an eye on when we'd have enough money to invest in either debt repayment or increasing production capacity. Also keeping an eye on our net profit, making sure it was going in the right direction. Next was our inventory report. I'd keep an eye on our raw materials to make sure that we had enough for our next production run, and I'd keep an eye on our finished products to make sure that we had enough in stock to keep us going. And if we started to get low, we'd raise our prices to make sure that we continued to have cereals in stock. And finally, our summary sales order report, very important to keep an eye on what kind of sales volume we were getting from day to day for each variety and know whether our pricing and advertising structure was functioning as we needed it to. Speaking of strategy, the Molson 5 strategy consists of 3 main pillars: a diverse product offering, with a high marketing budget because we are part of the 500 gram market, and that is very sensitive to marketing. And finally, high profit margins. The first 2 pillars are really supporting the third pillar, which was our main strategic goal throughout the game. Just to give you an idea of why we decided to diversify our product offering, here is how many units you need to sell to keep up with a 25,000 unit per day production capacity, depending on the number of varieties of cereal you have available. If you only make one variety of cereal, you need to sell all 25,000 units of that cereal variety on average each day in order to keep up. If you have 2 varieties, you only need to sell 12,500 units of each cereal variety to keep up, and so on, getting lower and lower as you have more varieties of cereal. So you can charge more for your cereal when you have more varieties and yet still get the number of units sold in aggregate that you need to keep up with your production capacity. Here you can see how we enacted this diversification strategy in the final competition. You can see we started with 2 large product runs, first of raisin and then of the nut cereals. This is because in previous runs of the game, these had been our real cash cows. So we wanted to start out with large stocks of those to make sure that we had time to build up stocks of the smaller cereals before coming back to produce more of our cash cow cereals. After we did those large production runs, we did 100,000 unit production runs, first of strawberry, then original, mixed fruit, and blueberry. By week 8, you can see we had stock of all 6 varieties of cereal. We dropped original and reduced emphasis on the nut variety because of changing market circumstances over the course of the competition. Here you can see the second pillar of our strategy, the high marketing budget. This was obviously important in the 500-gram market. We've discovered over the course of several weeks that a budget of $200 per product per region seems to be the sweet spot for our strategy. We found 100 didn't quite have the effect we needed, and 300 had very little effect over 200 while being considerably more expensive. You can see from this chart that Molson 5 spent more than any other company on our advertising as a percentage of sales. Quarter 2 and quarter 3, Team B did beat us in terms of marketing expense per sales, even though we had the higher average over the whole game. However, Team B had much lower sales volume, so even in quarter 2 and 3, we were spending more actual euros on advertising than Team B. And this leads to the third pillar of our strategy, the high profit margins. As you can see here, Molson 5 had the highest gross profit margins over the course of the whole game, as well as, of course, the highest average. This was supported by our high advertising and the fact that we could afford to sell very few units per variety because we had so many varieties in stock. When it comes to net profit margins, Molson 5 was actually beaten by Team D, whose high production capacity allowed them to have very low overhead costs, which reduced the overall costs of their products. This graph will give you an idea of Molson 5's financials over the course of the competition. You can see that we immediately invested $1 million of our cash into increased production capacity. Our production capacity stayed even throughout the whole game, and so did our equity. Our bank loan decreased over the course of the game as cash became available from profits coming in. You can see this profit line steadily inclining over the course of the game, and you can see this is our cash balance, which declined as we used it in operations and came up as money came in, but then decreased each time that we paid off part of our bank loan. Of course, none of this performance would have been possible without the 3 C's. In terms of coordination, the team worked together outside of class to arrange our strategy and actions in advance. We used a Facebook group, for example, and within class, I, as the CEO, was often charged with making sure everyone was working in a coordinated manner. In terms of collaboration, all of our team members contributed to both the formation of our strategy and its execution. In terms of cooperation, our tasks were divided among the company management. Most of our business processes involved input from 3 to 5 members, and it would not be possible for these business processes to be done by just one person. Here is an example of one such business process, which shows the reaction of our team to each 5-day market report. Alex, our marketing officer, would receive the 5-day market report, collect the data, and then compile it until he could analyze the top 3 varieties of cereal in terms of volume and in terms of profit margin. I would check the inventory levels of our different products, and I would check with Martinez, our finance officer, to see if cash was available for a raw materials purchase for an order that I was considering making. If there was not enough cash available for the purchase, he would review the accounts receivable to see when the cash would be coming in. Once the cash came in, or if the cash was already available, we would see if we had enough in inventory of the top 3 varieties. If we did, then we would order materials for another variety. If we did not have enough inventory of the top three varieties, we would order materials for the one with the least inventory. Syed would then get the arrival date for the raw material, and when the raw materials arrived, I would release production. Production would begin, and once we had stock in place, Denley would set advertising and prices for those new products. The end result of all this was a well-functioning team following the three C's, and we were able to quickly adapt to changing market conditions and setbacks. For example, Team D managed to undermine our position in the 500-gram nut market, which had previously been our top cash cow. So we had to shift focus to other varieties, which we managed to do in a timely manner and come in second. But most importantly, we worked together as a team and learned a lot about ERP and strategic decision making. I hope you've enjoyed the class and my presentation. I want to thank you for watching, and I wish you all a great summer. Take care.